Richard, you can start.
Welcome to today's webcast. This is Richard Waugh from Zycus, your host for the event, and I'm pleased to be joined by Hackett Group for our presentation today. And the topic is building a business case for procurement transformation. Just some introductions. Again, my name is Richard Waugh, VP Corporate Development at Zycus. Enough about me. I'm pleased to be joined today by Melanie Flores, who's the practice leader for the Procurement Advisory for the European, Middle East, and Africa, EMEA, group for the Hackett Group. He has over 20 years of experience in management consulting, benchmarking, has vast experience working with Fortune 500 companies in Europe and in the Americas, leading their procurement transformation efforts, including operating model design, process optimization, strategic sourcing, and optimal strategies. And, Melanie frequently works with procurement senior executives to give advice on how to improve their organizational and process design by implementing best practices across source to settle. So we're very pleased to have Melanie join in for today's presentation. And before I turn it over to Melanie, just to give you a little bit of context on where Zycus fits within the procurement transformation standpoint. You know, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about transformation includes people, process, and technology, probably at least equal parts. And our role is as a technology provider. So we cover the source-to-pay process, both from what we would call the strategic aspects of procurement or the upstream functions around spend analytics, strategic sourcing, contract and supplier management, for example, as well as the operational or downstream procure-to-pay processes, including requisition, catalog management, PO, and invoice management. And kind of capstone that brings all this together is a tool called financial savings management that helps your procurement leaders, once they've completed this successful transformation, that in fact they get full credit for all the savings and the value that's being contributed to the business. So that's a broad overview of where Zycus fits from a technology footprint standpoint. And Melanie, I'd like to invite you now to lead us through the discussion of building the business case for procurement transformation.
Thanks, Richard. Well, what we are really going to cover today is looking at what are the procurement priorities for the year, and from there going to how organizations are transforming the procurement function, and to end with a case study on the technology side. So let us go with what are the top priorities for procurement functions this year. And this is very important for building the case for transforming the procurement function, because obviously everything starts with what we are trying to achieve. And what you're looking at, and if you are familiar with Hackett, you have seen some of these statistics in the past, but we conduct a study every year around what are the key issues, the top priorities for procurement functions for the coming year. And we ran this end of last year. And so we ask really a large number of organizations what they are looking for in terms of addressing their top priorities for this year. And what you see is you see in this list a very common objectives for organizations. If you see the number 2 in this list, reduce and avoid purchase costs, clearly this is quite critical for us in procurement, and this is something that probably has been in a study every single year that we have been on it. But there are some other interesting things, and actually it's very interesting to see that really the number 1 for this year is to elevate the role of the procurement function to a trusted business advisor. So it's really becoming that advisor to the organization to enable them to achieve the business objectives, which is very important for procurement functions. And other type of things that you see in the list is clearly the efforts that organizations are putting into expanding the scope and the influence that they have over the spend, going deeper, for example, in complex indirect spend categories, addressing and reducing, managing supplier risk, but also other type of things, in particular, very important for European organizations, enable innovation, so working with suppliers to help, with innovation for the business. So there are a number of objectives for procurement function this year, but if you see on the top, which is new to a certain extent, is that linked to being able to deliver and to enable the business to achieve their objectives. Now this plays in terms of what procurement needs to be done in order to deliver those objectives. And if we go to the next slide, in this study we also look at what are those capabilities, what are those projects, areas where organizations are working on to be able to deliver. And in this graph, pretty much what we did is an analysis in terms of how important some of those capabilities are versus how well is procurement function positioned to address those issues in order to enable the objectives of the business. And you see, for example, things right at the top right corner, such as strategic sourcing and category management. And we put it in green because this is very important. It's a critical development. It's very critical for a procurement function. Having said that, procurement functions still believe that they are well positioned to address this, and look at the for improvement. And category management, for example, also quite critical. Still, organizations, after going through the first wave of putting category management in place, they are rebuilding and improving further their approaches to category management. Things, for example, such as supplier relationship management, is an area of improvement. Organizations still struggling a little bit with that, but working on it. And you see, for example, other things in red, talent management, but also supply market intelligence capabilities or data analysis, reporting, etc. So procurement functions have a large number of capabilities that they would like to improve, to develop further in order to deliver. This is important because this is clearly the link to the transformation. We see this year, and clearly is going to go beyond that. In terms of the type of activities that are taking place from a transformation standpoint in procurement function, there are, we would say, two main areas. Training, so the entire talent management piece is quite critical, so training is quite an important component. But at the same time, the technology and the strategy development, so how the technology is going to be supporting and enabling the processes that they have been putting in place. So we split this graph between talent-related activities and technologies, broader technology type of transformation activities. And you see the orange one, which also has to do with helping the procurement function to become more agile, which is also one of the key objectives, I think is the number 3 this year, to help become more agile in support of the business. But you see a lot of green, a lot of blue in terms of technology, strategy development, training, that organizations are saying this year we really need to transform, and our transformation activities are going to be addressing those areas. Now, let's move into the actual transformation of the procurement function. What we are looking at is really a framework that helps organizations to go through hopefully a high impact transformation for the procurement function. And everything typically starts with assessing the current state of the function. really review the strategy, the process that you have to conduct a spend analysis, doing some prioritization, assessing where you are in terms of the different enablers such as technology, etc. From there, moving into develop the strategy, what are going to be the recommendations, what are the areas that we are going to be addressing, to later on develop a roadmap. And part of this, part of the roadmap that is going to be developed is also about the business case, which is going to support all different activities and the investment that you are doing in developing and transforming your procurement function and developing further or just establishing new capabilities based on what you would like to deliver to the business. And on in the last stage, it's about the detailed design and moving to implementation. Define all the different plans, doing design of the processes, the technology, selecting technology, and start executing against that implementation roadmap that you develop, and clearly tracking business cases to ensure that at the end of the day you really are delivering and you are getting the benefits that were expected when you started this. Communication, a critical component of whatever transformation plan that is taking place. But let's go a little bit deeper in terms of we see that organizations are deciding how to move through this transformation journey, if you will. And the slide that I'm showing is just a model that shows procurement in the middle, and then the key connections they have in terms of the rest of the business and the suppliers. And procurement is in the middle, get a number of requirements from the business, and is expecting as well the business value from the procurement function. And obviously, procurement is managing suppliers, giving also requirements in terms of what needs to be delivered and getting the value that suppliers should provide to the business. Now, we included these three main components because it's very important to understand each of them in order to decide what's going to be the objective and how you're going to go about your procurement transformation. So let me start with the first bubble, which is about the procurement value. So very important, as you start this transformation, you need to understand, the procurement functions need to understand what is the value, what are the services that they would like to deliver to the business, and what do they really aspire to be, what are the services that they are going to provide. And very important component is to understand what the business wants from procurement to do, and what is clearly the agenda, which is typically much more detailed from a procurement standpoint. These elements are important because at the end of the day is what is going to, if you make the long-term decisions in terms of in which direction you are going to transform. And the second component is about the performance. So once you understand what are the services that you are going to be providing and what the business and what you would like to deliver, what type of value, then the second important element is to understand how you are performing. Are you delivering? How do you, for example, compare to other organizations, to your peers? Are you delivering what you were expected to deliver or not? What are the gaps in terms of your performance? And only after understanding what is the service mix that you are going to have, what is the and also what are the performance levels that you would like to get, where you are, and what are the type of performance levels that you'd like to achieve. Then you can start looking into what the capabilities that need to be built to deliver. And those capabilities might be some of those that you already have, but you need to further develop, and some others might be things or areas where you actually have not been working on. And if you think, for example, in areas such as, innovation or even supply management or supply relationship management, some of those capabilities which might be in the talent area, such as skills, or might be in the technology area, might not be a core of what the procurement function was in the past. If you recall, the first, the number one priority that our organization said is the most important for us is becoming a trusted business advisor to the business. The type of skills that under the procurement function need to have in order to be able to do that and to engage with the internal stakeholders might not be the same skills that, for example, a typical good buyer or negotiator might have. So these are the type of things that where organizations need to understand in which direction they need to transform. And I'm picking one in terms of the skills, but there are many others. We also saw things around the risk management, or for example, the capabilities around data, things which are critical for the organization and that potentially are not as start this journey available there. Now, building capabilities and transforming the procurement function obviously might be different, for different organizations depending on where they are. But the typical steps, as we saw, is define the value. I'm going to go a little bit deeper in terms of what type of value I'm talking about. Assess your performance, and I'm putting the Hackett value grid from a performance standpoint, assessing how efficient you are, how effective you are, and understanding what are the capabilities that you have, because you might have already some of those in place, and there are some others that for the future you need to develop. Analysis of the gaps to be able to prioritize and for them develop the improvement plan, the roadmap, and very important, the business case, which is going to be able to help you to track and to demonstrate that you achieved what you started from the beginning. We need to understand that some of those transformations, investment required in terms of resources, but also the change that the organization needs to go through is important. So building the business case is important, even if everybody believes and agrees that you need to move into that direction. We always recommend to have that business case that is able, to help you track where you are and how far you are going, and to make sure at the end of the journey you really achieve what you wanted to, what was your objective. I'm going a little bit deep in terms of this value proposition because this is really the source of defining what you would like, in which direction you would like to move. And this is a model that we developed some years ago, and it shows the different stages. And clearly, real organizations might be actually in all the different stages at the same time, particularly if they are large organizations. But typically, we see procurement functions evolving from value that they deliver, moving from assuring supply, which is really the core of what we are doing, and to get to price, a fair price, and then managing the cost of ownership, and then later on moving into helping organizations reducing the demand activity or the complexity of the demand, and really help them going to the top, which is value management. This is not really something to do with strategic sourcing as such, and it's actually understanding what the business would like them to get support on. It might be, for example, it might be helping them with an intention of mergers and acquisition, might be different type of things. And in each of the different stages, actually, the procurement function delivers value. And its value in each of these stages is not one or the other one. It's really actually on top of what you have been doing. And we see procurement functions evolving. Now, it's very important, coming back to the business case, making the link to the business case, is if you're evolving your value proposition and you're transforming your procurement function to be in one of those areas and deliver this value, it's to be a link between those things. And it's clear from, at Hackett is an organization that working with a lot of metrics and benchmarks. Some of those things might be difficult to measure, but when doing a transformation of the function, you need to get to a level of detail where you're able to track some of those things. Now, we look at the generic framework for a transformation, but many organizations that we work with like to start with a transformational benchmark. This is really a project, and if you recall the framework that I was showing before, it starts with an assessment. And what transformational benchmark does is, or the beauty of a transformational benchmark, is that actually starts with this assessment and enables organizations that decide to go in this direction to have a lot of information and a lot of empirical data that enables them to understand where they are, particularly on performance. So if you see this, the way it is similar to the framework that I was referring to. You start with the assessment and the analysis of where you are, identify opportunities. But the beauty of this is that you are understanding what is your performance, and you have benchmarks which are, allows you to be quite clear, not only in terms of what the capabilities are, but how you're performing, what is the outcome of all this, which also helps you prioritizing what are the type of initiatives that you're going to put forward first, probably, and then after. So this is a way to start. This is a way to go about an assessment. And as I said, many organizations like it because then they can run a benchmark, for example, after they have done their own, they are done with the transformation, and see how they have been moving compared to, for example, world-class organizations in Hackett's definition, but also to their peers. Have they been really closing the gaps that they wanted to close or not? Now, when organizations are developing their roadmap, clearly they're going to face very different options, and we really recommend to look at the different scenarios. There are different ways and how you or approaches that you could take to about how you're going to be transforming the procurement function. Some of them, and this is just an example that I'm showing, but some of them are going to require, for example, more effort, because you're going to be potentially running some things in parallel. Some other approaches take, you may not include so many resources, but it may take a longer to get there, and potentially the return on investment might be reduced. I think everybody has been now in some of those invitations where it takes so long that at the end nobody knew if they achieved what they wanted to achieve, or things happened in the middle and then it was difficult to be able to track all that. But each of the different scenarios and different options have pros and cons. So the important thing is to understand, now that you understand what is the value and that you are about what are the type of things that your transformation is going to be focusing on, before moving into implementation, what are the scenarios, what are the options that we have, so that you decide to go for the one that fits better your objectives. And this might be different by the different organizations, the difference, the specifics of each function and the specifics of the transformation that you are going about. This is just an example in terms of the business case, and it's important building the business case to understand how, what is the return on investment that you are making. And nowadays, we're all aware that the procurement function needs to do, more with less. I don't have metrics in this deck around that, but we have seen that world-class organizations, but also other companies, have been reducing the operating cost, headcount, etc., with the help of become more efficient, become effective, and utilizing all the different levers that they have in order to make their function more lean and more agile. But still today, procurement needs to do more with less, and it's important to have a business case that's showing how investment is going to take place and what are the savings that you're going to get out of that, and what is the benefit, what is the real impact. For those procurement functions that are reporting to the finance, I think the CFO is going to be hard to convince without a solid business case. And the days that we're just introducing whatever type of system just because we knew that it was going to be a good thing, I think it's gone. And it's very important to build a solid business case. Why, for example, procurement functions like the benchmarking piece, because this gives them the input in order to be able to build some of the business cases that they require. But it's a critical step in any case to develop this and use it later on as a tracking element of your transformation. I'm including an example in how this looks in a little bit more detail. What are the type of metrics that you may want to include supporting the business case? And if you are a little bit familiar with Hackett, you might recognize the style in terms of using a lot of the benchmarks. But this is about utilization of e-sourcing tools, and you might get these similar to other different areas that you might want to address as part of your transformation. But if one of the elements that you're going to be addressing is, for example, utilization of e-sourcing tools, these metrics that we have, we made an analysis in terms of what is the cost reduction and cost avoidance. I know some of you might be asking what is exactly the definition behind that, but it's really price-based. But the idea behind is, we look at the organizations that are using to a moderate to extensive e-sourcing tools to those that are not using them or using them to a low extent. And we look at what is the cost avoidance and cost reductions for those group of organizations. And clearly we see that there are some savings that are come from that. And I'm talking about the left-hand side metric. So understanding where you are, these type of metrics and your own analysis might help you to identify what is the type of benefit that you could get increasing the utilization of your resourcing tools. And in the right side of the slide, clearly there is always no unique element that impacts your business case or your benefits and your investment. But there's also some other type of things. If in the left-hand side we have technology, actually in the right-hand side is talking about more the process and the compliance piece. And we also made a similar analysis, not only about the e-sourcing tools, but we wanted to understand organizations, how the savings compare when organizations are utilizing e-source tools, but they define when those tools need to be used at the spend carry level. And then we see that there is also a benefit around that. So in some cases you're going to have to go to the level of detail for building the business case. It might be difficult in some areas, but definitely is worth to do it so that you can, as I said, understand what is the case for your transformation. That I think what I'm going to do is give it back to you, Richard, so that you can take us through the technology case study.
Well, thanks so much, Melanie. Yes, and as stated at the outset, technology would only be one of the components in the formula for success of transformation, and you've covered all the many and various components of that, including process excellence and organizational design, having the right skills, and so on. I want to drill down into the technology component then as one of those critical components of the entire transformation. So I want to talk in terms of a technology transformation roadmap and kind of walk through the steps that start with what are catalysts for change to get this type of project initiated and build consensus, especially amongst the C-suite executives that will have to be bought in, have to sign off on that business case that you were discussing, Melanie. So starting with a catalyst, a reason to make a change, understanding the current state of performance. And you've mentioned benchmarking. I'll reiterate that point as a way to do a business case, understand what the current state or as-is process is, and help to set the target in the business case and in the implementation plan for what should be the desired objective, the end state or to be. We'll delve into, with a technology lens, identifying the specific value levers that can help to inform and quantify the business case. And then I'll walk through some practices for implementing the technology transformation and driving adoption. So catalysts for change, and they're varied. There could be market pressures, there could be business pressures, they could be what I'll call peer pressures of what the benchmarking tells us others in our industry or across the procurement function are doing. But starting with the market pressures, I just want to share an example here specific to the oil and gas industry, because that's been pretty dramatic. If you look at this chart reflects what's happened to the price of a barrel of oil the last year. So if you're in the oil and gas industry, you've seen the price drop out of literally the price of a barrel of oil where it went to about half the price it was. Additionally, hovering around the $100 a barrel market to where it's down to, early this year, $45 a barrel. And it's recovered somewhat, but think about the implications to that business, to the procurement function in particular, when you've seen that impact at the top line, where effectively your revenue is cut in half when the price drops that dramatically, and therefore having to apply that agility that Melanie was talking about to procurement to find ways to improve cost efficiency as a way to protect those margins. So just one example of some of the macro level market pressures that could drive this type of transformation. Next, the business pressures, and we actually at Zycus did a study recently. You see the icon here in conjunction with Michigan State University, one of the leading supply chain schools in the U.S., to really delve into the pressures around what's driving technology adoption. And this reflects some of those business pressures. What are the things that procurement leaders like yourselves are the key drivers to move towards a technology transformation? So if you look, I know there's a lot of bars here and a lot of colors, but the ones the bars in blue and red really show the highest correlation of those that strongly agree that this was a top pressure. So it starts with better integration and visibility. And visibility then helps them identify opportunities for savings, helps achieve savings targets. Savings, we know, have always been a key driver, a key metric for measuring procurement's performance, but you see savings being augmented with or complemented by a desire to get end-to-end visibility. And really that's the promise of what this technology offers across sourcing and procurement processes. How do I get the visibility to make the information, give me the data analytics that make that information actionable so that I can go and achieve those savings. So somewhat interesting that encouragement by senior management or management directive a little bit further down the list, but those can also obviously be significant drivers, and sometimes the outcome of those market pressures that I spoke about initially, that's going to put more visibility within the C-suite, more focus around how are we doing in our own procurement transformation. And the pressure that's captured in this particular study, too, again, it's an academic study, so the term used here is mimetic pressure, so kind of mimicking others, but I'll call it peer pressure. And at the top of the list, it's really a desire to be amongst the best in class, and Hackett being really, I think, the preeminent benchmarking organization produces that show how the market overall is performing in relation to world-class or top performers or best in class. And I think this comes out of our study as really one of the big drivers of peer pressure, somewhat lesser influenced by what competitors within their own industry have done if they've adopted procurement technologies that enable enhanced competitiveness. But overall, it's a desire to be seen as a leader, as best in class, by adopting state-of-the-art technology. So the steps that I mentioned earlier is benchmarking, and I'll use, again, I think Hackett has the most widely followed benchmarks and the most valuable across the industry, but I'll share some others as well. And look at both strategic procurement and operational procurement. And in this case, this is a slice that comes from the Center for Advanced Purchasing Studies associated with Arizona State University. And I think what this helps to show is that benchmarks are extremely valuable, looking at things like spend under management, what is the cost savings, what's the efficiency of the procurement function as measured by what's the ratio of the procurement's operating expense to the spend that's being managed, and therefore what kind of ROI is it generating. But this also shows some variability from industry to industry, which I think is an important consideration. As you apply the benchmark data, understand how your baseline performance relates to a benchmark for your particular industry. So it's interesting, for example, that industries that, particularly manufacturers that have a history of strong cost and category management, especially on the production materials like aerospace and defense or industrial manufacturers, have a higher spend under management than, say, a financial services firm at just about 76%. But that may also mean that industries or companies in those industries that have more room for improvement on spend under management may also see bigger opportunities on cost reduction. So you can see that in financial services, amongst this comparison, the highest rate of cost reduction at better than 5%, it's an additional about % for cost avoidance, and the ROI for every dollar invested in procurement substantial across the board, but ranging from somewhere between 3x to about 14x in the financial services industry. So how benchmarks to get started with on the strategic side, these are the Hackett benchmarks from operational procurement that also look at that more transactional element around requisitions, POs, invoices in the procure-to-pay process. And wide disparity shown here between what's being achieved by the world-class performers, overall peer group as measured in the Hackett benchmark. So, on a cost per PO calculation, for example, almost 5 times higher cost per PO in the peer group, and better than twice as, 2 times higher on a cost per invoice basis. So lots of opportunities to take costs out of the process, achieve efficiencies by moving towards a world-class set that really requires this level of automation. So in building that business case and really tying it to the technology components, we like to look at where are the value levers as we look across sourcing and procurement technology. And it's important to identify for your business and therefore for your business case which value levers are the most critical to be quantified as part of that analysis. So again, looking at things like spend analytics to help increase spend under management and discover more savings opportunities at a granular category level, and then using the e-sourcing tools to accelerate the throughput and the velocity of those sourcing projects. And Melanie referred to 50% higher savings with the use of e-sourcing tools. And, you know, there's an argument to be made that says without resource constraints, applying good category management process to the sourcing function should yield the same savings that you get with the benefit of technology. But the argument and the reason for 50% higher savings is the technology allows you to increase the throughput, the number of events that you can run, and able to those savings forward faster because of the cycle time benefits as well. So the other benefits to focus on, what is the benefit in the contract management space of having true visibility to those negotiated corporate agreements so that you reduce the incidence of expending other than approved contracted vendors. And in the supplier management space, typically the answer is that most companies feel they have too many suppliers and need to rationalize that supply base, and can then quantify a benefit of being able to direct and divert more of the spend towards the preferred supply base to get leverage savings. On the transactional side, reducing those per PO or invoice costs in line with what world-class performance is. And again, it's important to know within your business, is this one of the levers that you can incorporate into your business case? This is a productivity benefit. So in some organizations, only hard dollar bottom line benefits might be counted in the business case, and this one might be perceived as softer, but certainly provides productivity enhancement potential. And other benefits by being able to speed up the entire procure-to-pay process, including the invoice management, to capture prompt pay discounts or accelerate and enhance P-card rebates. And being able to pull it all together with an effective means for tracking those savings all the way through the savings life cycle, from a pipeline of opportunities to identified or potential savings, all the way through to actual realized savings based on actual invoices paid against the negotiated agreement. So those are the components that we tend to look at in putting together the business case for the technology transformation. Just to share another perspective then, because the next step in the process tends to be a decision about how do I prioritize or phase in this technology roadmap. Very few organizations would have the capacity to deploy an entire end-to-end source-to-pay technology suite, for example, in a big bang approach. Sometimes there are phasing or prioritization decisions to be made. This model comes from partners' best practices for sequencing technology investments and procurement, but it does map closely to what Melanie was discussing earlier. For instance, the starting point being spend visibility. Map your external spend, normalize and cleanse that data through spend analytics to get a granular view to what's being purchased to inform your sourcing decision. So next step, execute those sourcing waves through an e-sourcing tool, which, as Melanie said, is going to generate 50% higher savings than if you were doing this in a non-automated fashion. And once those negotiated agreements are in place, organizations that don't take the next steps to implement compliance processes often find significant savings leakage. To prevent that savings leakage, ensure compliance with those negotiated approved vendor agreements, a compliance program that incorporates contract lifecycle management, procure pay, maybe VMS for some of the services procurement, really is a way to make sure those savings are captured and realized. And on a long-term basis, focusing on those supplier relationships. So you've gone through a lot of effort to analyze the spend, analyze the markets, negotiate the best agreements with your preferred vendors. Now it's manage that supply relationship on an ongoing basis. So make sure that we're tracking the KPI performance on scorecards, that we have a rich repository of information about suppliers, that we can give early warning signs and manage potential supply risk. So those are really the steps from an implementation best practice standpoint. And drilling into each one of those just a little bit further, the recommendation pretty universally is to start with spend analytics. And here, for example, a Hackett benchmark that says, on average, the peer group has about 66% of spend under management, but world-class has just about 20% more spend under management, 85%. So that's a great target to shoot for. You can get 85% spend under management, then I can maximize savings. But to do that, I'm going to need better spend visibility. So we're seeing here some Gartner data again. They've identified that top performers in the market have visibility at a granular line item level to 95% of spend overall. And as shown in these very detailed graphs, that means it's called level 3 and level 4, the class or commodity, if you're using a classification standard like UNSPSC, for example, that gets you a line item level of visibility that's going to make that spend data more actionable. The other thing that helps improve efficiency in this space is the frequency with which the spend analytics data gets refreshed. So again, from the Gartner study, they're saying that top performers are refreshing their spend analytics quarterly or more frequently. So that really begs for a technology solution, because as anyone who's trying to go through a spend analytics project on kind of a manual basis knows it's sort of a Herculean task, which therefore may be done annually or less frequently, but then the data is stale and it's not as meaningful or actionable. So step 1, start with spend. Step 2, drive sourcing savings. So you look at overall cost savings, the disparity between the peer group and the world class is pretty significant as well. So less than 3% for the peer group, but better than 5% for the world class overall. So, as stated earlier, with sourcing tools specifically, a 50% lift in overall savings. And what we've seen within our customer base, on those e-sourcing projects specifically, average savings of about 12%, as well as a cycle time reduction benefit. Then all about sustaining those savings. So it's the compliance capabilities that are represented by a combination of procure to pay, contract management, and supplier management. So here you see some relevant benchmark in each area, both from Hackett and Aberdeen. We talked about transactional cost reduction in the procure-to-pay area, dramatic differences between world-class and the peer group overall for cost per PO or invoice. Significant as well in the contract management space, where contract compliance with the benefit of contract management technology is twice as high for the peer group overall, and savings leakage is dramatically reduced, cut by a factor of 4 or more. And significant benefits in the supplier management space as well. So again, using the Hackett benchmark that compare number of suppliers per billion in spend, it's almost two-thirds fewer suppliers per billion of spend for world-class performers as compared to the peer group overall. So obviously, greater efficiency and productivity if you don't have to manage as many suppliers if you rationalize around your preferred vendors. And an interesting benefit that more and more procurement organizations are starting to look at is outside of cost reduction and efficiency altogether, what is the top-line revenue impact of increased supplier collaboration or procurement-led supplier innovation through supplier management programs? And here you can see the Hackett benchmark shows greater than 2 times improved performance in terms of revenue as a percent of total revenues, better than 7% coming directly from supplier innovation for the world-class companies. So real eye-opener in that business case, too, if you can take the top management a business case that shows not only bottom-line improvement through cost reduction, but actually top-line revenue enhancement due to supplier innovation programs. Step 4 is you've done all this hard work, make sure you get credit for the savings that have been delivered. So in Aberdeen studies, they've cited the fact that two-thirds of their best-in-class performers have the ability to track savings all the way through to financial statements. So the profit statement, the profit and loss statement, the cash flow, and the balance sheet, and that those companies have really focused on this critical linkage between procurement and finance. So on a scale of 1 to 5, those best-in-class companies rate the finance procurement collaboration as 4.35 out of 5. So very strong, better than any other function. So the takeaway is make friends with your colleagues in finance because they're a critical stakeholder. And the best way to do that is to have true savings visibility and tracking capability. So there's some data from a Gartner survey done with Rutgers University that showed that, in fact, most procurement organizations are doing this in some way, shape, or form today. But in most cases, they're using some combination of spreadsheets or homegrown tools that have the limitations of not enabling a true collaboration with finance or having approval workflows to sign off, or a way to standardize how savings will be calculated and tracked through the life cycle. So it's a new focus, really, from a technology standpoint, on enterprise-class tools to track and manage and report the financial savings that are generated, really the verification of what was promised in the business case that it's being delivered. So I want to close today then with kind of a case study from within our customer base. This is AMD in the semiconductor industry. And back to where I started on this technology transformation roadmap, the importance of market pressure driving the transformation projects. I talked about the oil and gas industry and what's happened to the price of a barrel of oil, but there's significant and kind of seismic changes in the semiconductor industry over the past few years as well, in that the traditional market for AMD's products, for the chips that they manufacture, had been PCs, and that's been significantly eclipsed in terms of the growth rate by tablets. So tonight you see your product mix changing, the people you sell to, the distribution processes changing. So in AMD's case, got a critical imperative driven by the market pressures to drive cost reduction as these market pressures led to a slowdown in their traditional PC market. And they needed to rationalize the supply base, manage potential risk, because a supply disruption in this market where product life cycles are so short has a dramatic impact on the business overall and the revenue potential. So despite the fact that AMD has historically been amongst Hackett's world-class performers, so already high productivity, in response to the market pressures, they needed to react by actually increasing their productivity, their efficiency of the procurement function, and driving savings simultaneously. So by deploying the technology transformation solution that consisted of spend analytics and sourcing and supply management tools, they actually reduced their overall procurement labor by 23%, simultaneously increasing the savings, the productivity of that headcount by 26%, and reducing the supply base by about a third overall. So dramatic benefits to the business coming from starting with having better visibility to spend, so a single version of the truth, to be able to not only identify cost reduction opportunities, but other savings, for instance, simply standardizing payment terms on something like Net 60, where in many cases they were paying much more quickly. So working capital benefit. In their case, they actually replaced an existing e-sourcing tool set, in this case with Zycus tools, that produced an incremental productivity benefit because of 15% higher adoption. So again, you're getting 50% more savings overall with these sourcing tools, and can, in this case, generate 15% higher throughput. That's an incremental improvement. And great adoption metrics around their supplier management, supplier performance measurement, with 100% adoption of their tools. So much better visibility to their strategic suppliers as well. So I know we've covered a lot of ground today, and really won't have a lot of time for questions. But Melanie, to throw back to you for some closing thoughts. And one of the things that occurred to me is you talked about the different models that organizations could approach with the transformation. The fan-loaded model, the programmatic approach, or the evolutionary approach. I'm wondering if you could comment on what are the markers or indicators as to which of those approaches might be the best fit for a procurement organization that's considering embarking on the type of journey.
Well, I think it really, what I was describing before is it really depends where you start and what is the burning platform that you have. Typically, we don't see, some of those implementations where you actually are trying to do everything in parallel just because resources is something that is scarce, and not everybody has the time and really the money to go for that. So I think that's one of the most important things, or elements to consider, which is what is the burning platform, what are the resources that you have, and how critical some of those things are. What I'm saying critical is some of the elements that you're going to be included in your transformation might be more critical than others, and some of them need to be delivered much faster than others. So the journey needs to be defined accordingly to what your requirements are, what the business is looking for, and also at the end of the day what the requirements from the business and when those needs to be delivered. As I said, typically we don't see, because this is, I guess, is common to all companies, the resources most times organizations try to pace their transformation, but the times when we saw so many companies going for years and years of implementation, I think they are gone, basically. Also because the new solutions enable to do it earlier.
Right, you got to deliver the results sooner. And great points, Melanie, about the burning platform, and kind of tying it back as well to our discussion around building the business case. I think that can help identify the priorities to say which these levers are going to drive savings the factors that can help make this a self-funding transformation approach as well. So really appreciate your insights and perspectives, Melanie. I think it's provided a lot of food for thought for our audience today, and I know there have been requests to get the benefit of slide deck as well. This will be emailed to everyone who participated after the session today, and want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for our webcast on building the business case for procurement transformation. Thanks very much.
Thanks.